This episode of the Happy Diabetic Kitchen podcast is sponsored by my diabetes supplier, US Med. US Med offers free shipping and 90-day supplies with every order. Tired of countless trips to the pharmacy? There's a much better solution. US Med. Call them now. I did, and I felt the love. Call 888-885-0012 to see how they can simplify your diabetes care. Let's meet Annie, a Type 1 athlete. This is the Happy Diabetic Kitchen, the podcast about people who love to eat and cook healthy. This is your guide to the world of healthy cooking and conversations about happy diabetic living and lifestyles, where we simply turn ordinary ingredients into something extraordinary. Welcome to the kitchen, and let's get cooking. Hello everybody, welcome to the Happy Diabetic Kitchen podcast. I am your host, Chef Robert Lewis, and this is the most delicious podcast ever. So today, friends, let's just get right into it. Regular exercise and health benefits for all humans, including individuals who live with diabetes, is super, super important. It's well established that participation in regular physical activities improves your blood glucose control and can prevent or delay the onset of type 2 diabetes. So now for diabetics, benefits of exercise, including increased cardiovascular fitness, greater muscle strength, and improved insulin sensitivity. Well, I know this, that while physical activity is very important in managing type 1 diabetes, I'm just going to do a quick shout out because yesterday, my wife and I got on our bikes, did a 20-miler, and feel great today. So I understand exactly how it impacts blood sugars, and it can be challenging. I know that. When I'm super active, walking or bike riding, I need to be more careful in monitoring my blood sugar levels. And for those people who do extreme sports, like our guest today, the need to monitor and to manage with eating and hydration requires even greater attention. So, Jason, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Great. Hey, have you ever chatted with an athlete with type 1 diabetes?
Other than maybe someone that we've had on this podcast before, I don't think so.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. Now, I know you and I are Bears fans, and we have to, we're always hopeful about the Bears in this coming season, sure. Right? Now, I've read a little bit about Jay Cutler and the other professionals and Division I athletes. So no question that having diabetes adds additional challenges for high-performing athletes. With that said, recent advances in technology and medicine offer ways for people to seek medical help and control of their disease. New apps such as Foodcate, Gluco help people log their sugars and food intake. New advances in blood sugar devices allow people to test their levels and get their results within minutes. More people and athletes are using smart pumps, such as continuous glucose monitors, CGM devices that stick to the skin and monitors blood glucose throughout the day. If you don't have a blood glucose monitoring system like a CGM, reach out to your doctor because I use one. I use the Libre 2 system and it is absolutely amazing. Some devices can even be set to auto mode to control insulin levels. Our podcast guest today is Annie. Annie is a type 1 diabetic who has had some experience with this exact topic. Diagnosed when she was very, very young, Annie grew up to be a successful volleyball player in high school and a competitive rower for 4 years in an NCAA Division program at Sacramento State University. Annie continues to push herself to be active, and she'll tell us more about her current long-distance running, hiking, as well as her professional work in the field of speech pathology and what she loves to eat and what she loves to cook. Okay, so let's do this. Join me in extending a huge welcome to Annie Smolenski. to the Happy Diabetic Kitchen podcast. And we are back with our amazing guest of the podcast. Her name is Annie Smolenski. She lives in beautiful Southern California and is an amazing type 1 diabetic. And so I'm not going to tell you too much, but Annie, welcome to the podcast. I have a quick question for you. Are you ready to get happy?
I am so ready.
Awesome. It's great to have you here. So Annie, why don't you give all the happy diabetics out there just a little, hey, here's who I am.
Well, my name is Annie, and I've been a type 1 diabetic for 21 years of my life. I'm currently 26. And in addition to being a diabetic, I also am a speech language pathologist. So currently I'm working with high schoolers, and I live in California.
Awesome. Well, thank you again for being on the podcast. And I think in all honesty, I think we should divulge our relationship. What do you think?
I think you're right. Mm-hmm.
Okay, go ahead. Tell everybody who you really are.
Well, everyone, I'm actually super honored to also be Chef Robert's niece. So he is one of my favorite uncles.
Wow, I thought I was your favorite.
That's what I said. You're one.
One of the favorites. Okay, awesome. Well, Annie, it's awesome to have you here. I've got a few questions. Are you ready?
Let's do it.
All right. What are your earliest food memories? I mean, tell us about the food and dishes and the people that prepared it. What are those memories while growing up?
Sure. Well, when I think of my earliest food memories, I really can trace it back to being a toddler in the kitchen. And I so distinctly remember this memory of my mom baking cookies in the kitchen. And I'm so sorry to be mentioning cookies on the Happy Diabetic podcast. But I just remember that moment watching my mom, mixing the dough, smelling those cookies, baking in the oven. And I remember my mom helping me mold the dough into a ball, watching the cookies rise in the oven. So I always, in my family, food is kind of what draws people together. So that memory of baking cookies has stuck for sure.
Well, Annie, in the Happy Diabetic Kitchen, all my friends know that it's everything in moderation. So cookies are okay, right?
Love that.
Yeah, I mean, okay. But again, moderation is the key, right?
Right.
So your mom, she was an influence on the way you cook.
Definitely.
And she is really a good cook.
She is a good cook. She'll be honored to hear you say that.
Do you have a favorite success quote? I mean, do you have like a motto or something that you have just lived your life by, or something that resonates with you?
Yes. Well, when I think of a quote that has really stuck with me, I think about a motto that someone who I really respect and admire shared with me. And that quote was, "Clear is kind." And not only do I think this principle can be applied to our relationships with people, but I really think it can also be applied to our lives as diabetics. In my younger years, I remember feeling that I didn't want my diabetes to be an inconvenience to others. And so instead of letting people clearly know, listen, you guys, I have a low blood sugar, I might just need to take 10 minutes and sit this one out, I quickly, eat some glucose tablets and try to power through with whatever the group was doing. And now I recognize that by doing that, I was still so preoccupied doing the activity with my blood sugar, with feeling okay, that I really wasn't enjoying the moment. And so this principle of clear is kind, I've learned as a diabetic that when I'm clear with my expectations with people, not only is it kinder to myself, but 99.9% of the time I found people are so kind and gracious back. In fact, people are eager to help, whether that's, offering me some sugar or just being willing to sit with me while my blood sugar rises. I even think clear is kind can be applied to our relationship with our endocrinologists. I think we walk into those appointments feeling like these people are the experts in the field, which they are, but we are also the people who live with diabetes 24/7 every single day. And so being able to clearly advocate for what we're hoping for, what we need, I think in turn, again, that's kind to ourselves. And I found that doctors are really responsive to that too.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Annie. I mean, I think you have to be your own advocate when you see your doctor. So many times I remember in my early diagnosis, I would just go to the doctor's office and just kind of sit there, waiting for them to come up with all the ideas. But I soon found out that do some research, learn what you can, and come to them with suggestions and ideas. And my endo is just super responsive to that.
Yes, I totally agree.
Yeah. So, Annie, when you were growing up, what was the reaction of your peer group or your friends about diabetes? And also, how old were you when you got your pump?
Sure. So I was diagnosed at 5 years old, and I got my insulin pump when I was 7. I think growing up with diabetes, mostly my entire life, I've always heard that motto of you can't let your diabetes define you, you define your diabetes. But I think especially when I was little, I took that to the extreme. And because I didn't want my diabetes to define me, I almost felt like it was something that was a weakness. And so when I would be out with friends, especially in my teenage years, instead of just pulling out my insulin pump, giving myself some insulin while we were at the table, I would leave after ordering and go into the bathroom to give myself insulin. And that wasn't because I had received any negative reactions. I just think I felt like it was a weakness at that time of my life. And so really it took sort of this perspective change for me, Robert, when I realized that in college, or as I was applying to colleges in high school, when they would ask those essay prompts of, what's an adversity you've overcome, I found myself constantly talking about my diabetes. And so that was kind of a perspective change for me of realizing that it wasn't really a relationship of me against diabetes, but how can I live, a life that is pouring into others, a healthy life, a happy life with my diabetes, which has really shaped who I am.
Yeah. So what would you tell a type 1 diabetic who might be 13, 14, 15, or the mother of, or the dad of? I mean, was eating difficult when you were out with your friends? I mean, how was that? Was that challenging?
That's a great question, and I give so much credit to my parents from such a young age, being diagnosed at 5. I felt like they really instilled in me courage to not be afraid to do things. If I wanted to go to camp, that wasn't a diabetic camp, they let me go. If I wanted to go on a week trip with a friend, they let me do that. And so I think because they instilled this sense of ownership in me, I felt like I had courage to, go out with friends to eat and know how much insulin to give myself. So particularly for young kids or teenagers who are diagnosed with that relationship of food, I think it's really about taking ownership. You want to be able to do the things you love. And so being responsible, knowing that you're going to need to have some insulin with your meal, I think that makes the relationship with food easier because you still want to do the things you love.
Yeah. Yeah. Did you ever wake up at a moment and say, I've got this aha moment, like a time when really something profound happened about your diabetes? Like I know for me, my aha moment was at a diabetic class surrounded by other diabetics. And I thought to myself, oh, so this is not that unusual. There's other people just like me. And for me, that was kind of my diabetic spiritual awakening, right? I thought, oh, okay, so it's not so unique.
Yes, I love that example, Robert. And I think even in my own life, again, having that relationship in the beginning with diabetes of me against diabetes with that perspective change of, even though I don't want diabetes to define me, it has shaped who I am. And when I look back on my life now, I really can see how diabetes has made me more resilient, how it's made me a more compassionate person. And so realizing that those are positives, I think now my relationship with diabetes is walking through this world with this disease that has shaped who I am in many positive ways, instead of being something that is antagonistic. It's more of something that I found helps me overcome adversity.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. I love that. So what and just on a side note, this might be redundant to what I just asked you. So if it is, we can move on. But what have you learned on your diabetes journey that might be inspiring to others?
This is a great question. I think first and foremost, being a diabetic, and you touched on this too, Robert, about feeling like you weren't alone. In the beginning as a diabetic, I often would find myself wanting to hide my diabetic devices, like really making sure my clothes were covering my insulin pump or later on my CGM. But now when I'm out in public, every time, it doesn't matter if it's, a 4-year-old child or an elderly adult, when I see someone with a diabetic device on, I always feel compelled to just go up and hear their story as a diabetic. And so I think realizing that you're not alone, and being able to empathize with other people who know what you're going through, I've just found that is equally thrilling to me to hear someone's diabetic story, knowing that you aren't isolated with this challenging day-to-day disease.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. Now, Annie, you are an athlete. Let's just be honest, okay? So I know you were going to laugh at that, but you are. I mean, you were a volleyball player in high school, right?
Right.
And then you became a rower. Is that what you call it?
Yes, rower in college.
Rower in college, and that was a big deal, right?
It for sure, yeah. I mean, it was Division I, so
right. So that's like big time.
Next level, yeah.
So, because we love to talk about food in this podcast, how were your eating? How did you have to change your eating for those kinds of physical activities, or did you?
That's a great question. Well, as anyone who enjoys sports or being active, kind of that key term that everyone talks about is carbo loading, which really is diabetics. That is sort of something we try to avoid.
Right.
So initially, it really was this balance of trying to, one, fuel my body, but also not having those carbs kick my blood sugar up to a high number.
Yeah.
And I remember early on, as growing up playing sports, I must have been in 6th grade, and I had a track event, and my mom, not knowing my go-to low blood sugar fuel was always a Capri Sun or a juice box. And so I chug this juice box before my mile race. And of course, now I know that's why athletes drink Gatorade, because juice has acid, and it was not a pretty scene after that mile race. So it's certainly been a learning curve of, being active, playing sports. But I was fortunate enough in college, there was a younger rower on the team who was also type 1 diabetic. And so having her on the team, we really would often talk about, how is this practice going to affect our blood sugars, or being in that racing shell on the water. I told her I have a low blood sugar, I remember she'd pass me up some snacks. So again, that community of people who can surround you is so important, even in sport.
So yeah, I did do a little research on carbing up, and learned a lot of times that athletes do carb up because carbs is your body's main fuel source, right? Carbohydrates. So people go after that big time. Mm-hmm. In your mind, what's the biggest challenge diabetics face today regarding eating?
Yes. Well, I know for myself, especially having diabetes for 21 years, I've seen the progress in technology and diabetic care, which on one hand is wonderful, because I think we even have more resources now to take care of our bodies. But with that, with the increase in technology, I often can feel like it's so much information, even looking at my CGM graph that can show every hour of that up and down. So I feel like the biggest challenge for diabetics now is that we have these additional resources or this additional information. It even makes our relationship with food more complex. How is this certain number or this certain food going to affect my blood sugar number?
Well, listen, let's talk about blood sugar numbers. I'm going to scan my CGM. Why don't you look at yours and let's just compare numbers. I mean, it's about 5:30 Pacific Standard Time. It's 7:30 here in the great state of Iowa. So I'm going to scan myself. Let's see. I'm at 99 straight line.
Robert, you guys, I really was so worried when he asked this question that I'd have a terrible number and I would lose all credibility. But I'm at 106 and trending even.
Wow. What did you have for dinner?
Well, I just came from work, so I was running around with the kids.
Okay. Yeah, Cindy made this delicious penne pasta vegetable dish with a little red sauce. So, I mean, it was really great. But again, I take mealtime insulin. So, I looked at the carbs and looked at the best I can. So I'm feeling pretty good. Well, listen, let's talk a little bit about eating and cooking the foods you love. What's your favorite food?
Oh, I probably could eat a nice thin crust wood fire pizza every day of my life.
Oh, yeah. Do you have a favorite topping?
Oh, almost the more unique, the better. Maybe like some prosciutto, some fig jam, some pears.
Would you share with the listeners what might be a day in the life of your eating? Like, what does that look like?
That's a great question. I feel, working full time, often having events after work, I really try to fuel as much as possible. Also being active. So typically, I'll wake up and have a breakfast. Usually I'll scramble some eggs with a slice of toast. I'll bring a snack to work. One of my favorite snacks recently has been a little dish of cottage cheese with some cut strawberries.
Yeah, that's really good.
Yeah, I love that.
Oh, and pumpkin seeds. Oh, that's good.
Then for lunch, I usually bring a salad to work, not because I'm mega healthy, but I really just try to get those veggies in as much as I can throughout my days. But I'll put a ton of stuff on it to make sure it's filling, avocado and all of that great stuff.
Yeah.
And then for dinner, it really just depends. I always try to have some type of protein, salmon, chicken, even a steak with a veggie and a carb side. Lately, I've been really into polenta and orzo pasta.
Do you have a favorite snacky snack?
Oh, a favorite snack. I really enjoy air-popped popcorn. Yeah,
awesome.
I enjoy that.
Favorite food to cook?
Oh, I love a good pasta dish.
Okay, awesome. And are you a good cook? Do you like to cook?
I do. In some ways, I feel like cooking is therapeutic after a busy day, just coming home and following a recipe. I wouldn't say I'm an amazing cook, but I do enjoy it.
Awesome. Well, Andy, what else would you like to talk about?
Well, I was going to say we could talk about The Bachelor on ABC, but that probably wouldn't be what your listeners want to listen to on
I don't know. If you want to hear more about The Bachelor, go to my Facebook page and request it. I am not an expert on The Bachelor. I just want to say.
Oh, yeah, Robert. Is there anything else you'd like to talk about?
I don't know. Any final thoughts for the people out there, and those that might be struggling, those that might be thinking, "Oh my gosh, I don't know what to do, and I just am very discouraged."
Oh,
because I think that's a common happening with people with diabetes because it's a tough disease.
Absolutely. And I am here to tell you that I have been there more times than I can count of feeling discouraged. And what I have found in those times is to really break apart I often feel like I view diabetes as this lifelong marathon, but instead of viewing it from that perspective, I really try to take those thoughts captive and view it as a day to day. What do I need to do today? I think even celebrating those small victories, maybe you were at a 200 blood sugar for the day and then you dip down back in range. I always just try to celebrate that, even if it's just kind of taking a breath and realizing that, okay, I'm back in range. I think celebrating those small victories, looking at diabetes not as this lifelong marathon, but just something that I am working through each day.
Yeah, no, I think I think I am a lot the same. And a really good friend of mine, Jim Greer, once said, Robert, do you know why the rear view mirror is so small and your windshield is so big? Because it's not about where you've been, it's about where you're going. So focus on the forward. Don't worry about yesterday and maybe this morning, but tomorrow's a new day, and just go after it.
I love that. That is great advice.
Yeah, I think it is. And it's the advice that I try to live by, because, some days are great, some days are not so good. It's up and down. It's a roller coaster.
That's awesome. So great.
Well, Annie, no one loves you more than me. It was great having you on the podcast. Anything else you want to throw out?
You know what? Shout out to Chef Robert Lewis. That's all I can say.
Wow, I'm humbled. I'm so humbled. Well, I'm honored to have you as part of my family, that's for sure. Because you are an inspiration for me, by the way, just FYI. You have such a positive attitude on life, and you take such good care of yourself, and you've helped me with some issues before, and I just appreciate it.
Robert, that means so much to me, and I feel the same way about you. So thank you for having me.
Well, it's awesome. Okay, everybody, when we come back, we've got a little game for Annie to play. And you know what it is? It's the 411 game. So we will be right back. Okay, everybody, welcome back to the Happy Diabetic Kitchen Podcast. We've got our guest, Annie Smolenski, type 1 diabetes. Thank you again, Annie, for a great conversation. I'm sure it will be inspiring and helpful to everyone who's listening. But I'll tell you what, I think it's time to play the Rapid Fire 411. So here's what's going to happen. Are you ready to play?
I can't wait.
Okay, so here's what's going to happen. I'm going to ask you a series of rapid fire questions, and you're simply going to choose your preference. For example, bread or butter or olive oil, or riding a bike or hiking. All right, are you ready to go?
I'm ready.
Here we go. Olive oil or coconut oil?
Olive oil.
Okay, mango or papaya?
Mango.
Waffles or pancakes?
Pancakes.
Grilled steak or grilled fish?
Grilled steak.
Okay, how do you like it cooked?
A medium well. Don't judge me.
No judge. This is a no judgment zone. Chunky or smooth peanut butter?
Smooth all the way.
Wow. Okay, I'm into chunky. Valentine's Day or St. Patrick's Day?
St. Patrick's Day.
Okay. Favorite vegetable?
Brussels sprouts.
Bacon or ice cream?
Ice cream.
Do you have a favorite flavor of ice cream?
I'm kind of a butter pecan girl.
Strawberry for me.
It's a good one.
Coffee or tea?
Coffee all the way.
Oh, me too. Superhero or supervillain?
Superhero.
Okay. Roller coasters or merry-go-round?
I think roller coasters.
I'm a merry-go-round all the way. And finally, Annie, if you could break bread, have a meal with anyone, past or present, who would it be and why?
Yes. I would have to say Corrie ten Boom. And she was that Dutch woman who rescued all of those Jewish people in the Netherlands.
Oh, wow.
I would just be fascinated to know her story and what made her the way she was.
That's awesome. I love that. Well, Annie, thank you again. No one loves you more than me. It's been great having you on the Happy Diabetic Kitchen podcast, and thank you for sharing your story.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
Thank you. Appreciate it. All right. Have a great day, Annie.
Thank you.
Receiving your medical supplies like glucose monitors and insulin pumps can sometimes be a hassle, even painful. Painful is taking blood out of your fingertip to test your glucose, but not with US Med. Their motto is better service, better care. It's what they call white glove service, and that's what I experienced. I was worn out by having to make multiple trips to the pharmacy, only to discover the orders were not ready. Long lines, or we need to call your doc to confirm the refill. And they would say, don't worry, we'll take care of everything. Then only to find out 2 weeks later that the doc has not responded to the email or the fax. I would reach out again to the pharmacy, and they would say the doc never called us back, and they never followed up. That's the thing I hated the most. Do what I did. Head over to usmed.com. You'll find the link at happydiabetic.com right on the front page. Are you ready for US Med to always provide you 90 days worth of supplies and fast free shipping? That's right, free shipping. They carry everything from insulin pumps, diabetes testing supplies, to the latest CGMs. The Freestyle Libre 2 and the Dexcom G6. Now, you know how much I love the Libre 2 system. I have it on right now. It's a great system, but to have it delivered simple and easy was amazing. If you're just starting with Medicare like me, I know that's hard to believe, US Med should be your next call. You're going to talk to an operator who will know you by name, have your information, courteous, quick, helpful, and knowledgeable. They cover broad private insurance coverages, over 800 private insurers, and they are A+ rated with the Better Business Bureau. If you're looking for supplies, everything from insulin pumps, diabetes testing supplies, to the latest CGMs, well, and if you're looking for better service delivered right to your door, US Med might be just what you're looking for. usmed.com or call 888-885-0012. Don't wait any longer. I'm glad I called, and I can tell you this, I am feeling so much love. Okay, hold on. I think I hear my doorbell. That must be my 90-day supply. So be sure to follow me on all my social links. You'll simply find them all at happydiabetic.com. Just look for all my links at the top right-hand side of the page. And hey, if you have a question for me, go to my website, hit the contact tab, you ask questions, I'll answer them, and who knows, they might even become part of the next show. Maybe I'll select your question and send you some cookbooks as a big thank you. Thank you for listening, and if you are loving what you hear in the kitchen, please leave a comment or feedback at Stitcher, Google Play, or Apple Podcasts, or wherever you're listening. Your thoughts and comments are very much appreciated. Thank you again. Our podcast is produced and engineered by Jason Lewis. Our theme music by the Happy Diabetic Kitchen Band, and yours truly, Chef Robert Lewis on the guitar. And of course, as always, hanging around the kitchen, our kitchen mascots, Scout and Tucker. So thanks for tuning in, and let me leave you with this thought. Cooking is so popular today because it's the perfect mix of food and fun. That's what Chef Emerald Lagasse has to say. All right, everybody, thanks for tuning in, and remember, no one loves you more than me.